He suffocates a war god without throwing a single punch of fire. No flames, no lightning, just nothing. Air gone. And the guy who wiped out an entire army by himself drops like a puppet with the strings cut. Rewind 2 minutes. A kid the whole academy calls a god-forsaken failure walks up to a family painting that's been worshipped for centuries, glances at it for maybe 10 seconds, and casually proves the entire bloodline built its power on a lie. The dad in the room doesn't yell. He just backhands his own son across the marble floor. Rewind again. A squad of elite foreign scholars, the best minds their kingdom has, get handed 3 simple geometry problems. 3 months later, one of them is being dragged out of the building sobbing, and the rest are packing their bags in complete psychological defeat. Somewhere in between all that, a terrified rookie knight who spent his whole life being the weakest guy in every room looks a flying spear dead in the eye and doesn't move. He lets it hit him, on purpose, to save a city that doesn't even know his name yet. And at the very end of it all, a queen sitting on her throne feels her spy orb explode in her own palace, shattered by raw power she can't explain. And instead of panicking, she just smiles, like she's been waiting for this exact moment. That's the story. A world-famous genius gets thrown into the body of the dumbest kid in school, and by the time anyone figures out what's actually going on, kings are bowing and legendary killers are gasping for air on the floor. Here's how it starts. Somewhere on Earth, there's a professor. Not just any professor, the youngest math genius the world has ever produced. Global fame. Papers that rewrite textbooks. The kind of guy universities fight over. His name is Chen Luo, and by every account, he's already won the game of life. Then he closes his eyes, and opens them in a classroom that isn't his. Wooden desks, robes instead of lab coats, and a very angry teacher standing over him, demanding he solve a math problem in front of the entire class, as punishment for falling asleep. He blinks, looks down at his own hands. Wrong hands. Skinnier, younger, not his. The room is already laughing, not with him, at him. Because apparently, whoever's body this is has a reputation, and it is not a good one. Turns out, he's woken up inside a kid named Blair. A noble kid, technically, except the family's broke, the title means nothing, and Blair himself is famous around campus for exactly one thing, being magically useless. Can't cast a fireball, can't do anything. The other students don't just tease him, they treat him like a joke that stopped being funny a long time ago. So here's our genius professor, trapped in the body of the school's biggest punching bag, staring down a math problem the teacher clearly expects him to fail at. He does the math in his head before she even finishes writing it on the board. Because here's the thing nobody in this room understands yet. The idiot they've spent years mocking is currently doing calculations that would make actual university professors on his old world quit their jobs. This world's math is stuck somewhere back in the Stone Age compared to what's rattling around in his brain right now. He solves it instantly. Doesn't even really try. The teacher, a sharp blonde instructor named Brittany, stares at the board like it personally insulted her. That right there is the whole engine of this story. Everyone around him sees a washed-up loser. What they're actually looking at is a certified genius wearing a loser's face, and he has absolutely no interest in correcting them yet. Walking through the halls afterward, still getting used to a body that isn't his, he crashes straight into a girl storming the other direction. Blonde hair, sharp glare, and apparently zero patience. This is Isabella, and she does not do embarrassment quietly. Fire actually flares up around her hand out of pure reflex rage. Our guy barely dodges getting torched on day one of remembering he exists. Turns out she's not just some random hothead either. She's the mayor's daughter, skilled fighter, short fuse, and, completely unrelated to any of that, she's about to become a very large part of this story later. But right now she just thinks he's a weird pervert who ran into her on purpose. That night, flashes of Blair's old memories start bleeding into his head. The broke noble family, the years of being called useless. Every single humiliation this body's actual owner lived through. It's rough. And it explains a lot about why literally everyone at this academy treats him like background noise with a name tag. But here's the twist that flips the whole board. Somewhere in all that transmigration chaos, something changed. Blair's magic, completely non-existent before, is suddenly there. Our genius closes his eyes, focuses the way you'd focus on solving an equation, and a full fireball erupts in his palm, like he's been doing this for years. Not exam cheat sized, not, oh that's cute, an actual, real fireball. From the kid the entire school swears can't cast a spark. He doesn't even fully know how yet, he just knows it worked. Brittany, meanwhile, cannot let the math thing go. She drags him into her office and throws a random, deliberately brutal pairing problem at him, the kind of thing that should take a normal student the better part of an hour. He solves it in about 60 seconds. She stares at him like he just grew a second head. Doesn't even bother asking how, just makes a bet on the spot. There's a magic exam coming up. If he actually passes it, she'll stop trying to force him into mathematics. If he fails, he becomes her personal teaching assistant, permanently. She thinks she's basically already won. She has genuinely no idea what she just signed up for. Word about the math problem spreads fast, because apparently Isabella had been bragging to the whole class that she cracked it overnight, all by herself. Then she finds out the useless kid solved the exact same problem in 1 single minute. That does not sit well with her at all. She starts actively hunting him down, and not for a friendly chat. In the middle of all this social chaos, there's one person who's actually got his back. Toby, a chubby, loyal classmate, who's basically the only real friend Blair had before any of this started. When the resident bully starts talking trash, Toby steps in without hesitation, fully willing to throw hands over it. It's also Toby who casually drops the bomb that Isabella isn't just some random rich girl. She's the literal mayor's daughter, which recontextualizes exactly how much trouble our guy might be in. Then comes exam day. The instructor running the test actually tries to be nice about it. Tries to quietly skip Blair so he doesn't have to embarrass himself in front of everyone again. But the class bully won't let that happen. Forces the issue. Wants to watch him fail publicly. One more time, for the crowd. Blair steps up. No chanting. No hand gestures. None of the stuff every other mage in this world needs to cast anything. He just does it. A massive fireball rips out of nowhere and completely obliterates the target dead center. Silence. Then chaos. The kid nobody thought could light a candle just leveled the exam. This is the moment the entire vibe of the story flips. Up until now, everyone's underestimated him because that's just what you do to Blair. After this, that stops being an option. Curious about exactly what he's working with now, he starts digging through the academy library, actually reading up on how magic works in this world, instead of relying on old memories that aren't even his. Turns out there's a full ranking system, 7 tiers, starting way down at student and climbing all the way up to archmage, and above even that, something called sacred masters, legendary mages who can supposedly bend space itself and travel between worlds. Big picture stuff. The kind of ceiling that makes useless nobody look extremely far away from where this story's actually headed. Isabella finally corners him in class, still furious, calling him every name she can think of, fire practically radiating off her again. Right as things are about to escalate into a real problem, Brittany steps in, hauls them both into her office, and manages to untangle the misunderstanding before anyone gets set on fire for real. Then Brittany does something that changes his financial situation overnight. She publishes his summation method, the same habit trick he used to solve a problem instantly earlier, in an actual scientific journal. The reward money that comes back is massive, and like it's nothing, he casually drops a solution to something called Ralph's Riddle 2, an exponential problem that's apparently been sitting around unsolved for a while. 2 problems. 2 academic bombs dropped in the span of 1 week, and he's just getting warmed up. Curiosity, and maybe a little bit of an ego that hasn't fully caught up to how careful he needs to be, pulls him out past the academy walls at night. He throws on a mask, keeps his identity hidden, and heads into the city to the actual Magic Association library. The real deal, not the Academy's kiddie version. Registration test. An examiner named Andrew and an old veteran mage running the process. Should be routine. It is not routine. Whatever he does during the test goes so far past normal levels that it triggers an explosion, forcing the examiners to slam up an emergency barrier just to contain it. 2 grown, experienced professionals scrambling because a masked stranger just casually broke their equipment. Inside those restricted texts, he finds something that completely reshapes his plan. This world still thinks magic runs on 4 elements: fire, water, wind, earth. Like that's the whole periodic table. Our guy spent his old life studying actual chemistry. He knows there's a lot more hiding underneath 4 elements than these people have ever considered. So he decides to make one. Oxygen. He starts experimenting, compressing it, manipulating it in ways nobody in this world has ever thought to try, then combining it with fire just to see what happens. What happens is a shockwave, a real one. Windows shatter across the block, including, awkwardly, the windows at Brittany's own house. She is going to have some very pointed questions about that later. Meanwhile, word comes back that Ralph's riddle, the one he tossed off like it was nothing, just got picked up internationally. He and Brittany are being nominated for something called the Edwin Award, which, from the sound of it, is basically the biggest recognition this world's math and magic community can hand out. 6 months ago, this kid couldn't light a candle. Now, international academic committees are putting his name on award shortlists, and he's out in the city at night quietly reinventing chemistry nobody here has ever heard of. But the story doesn't let him coast. Right when things are trending up, personal drama at the academy explodes. B, the bully who spent this entire story making his life miserable, gets absolutely destroyed. Not by Blair, by his own father, brutally beating him right in front of the school director as a way to beg the administration not to expel him. And here's where it gets interesting. Blair actually steps in on B's behalf, asks the director for mercy, for the guy who's been bullying him this entire time. B doesn't know what to do with that. All that hostility, and the one person who shows him an ounce of grace is the kid he's been tormenting for years. It cracks something open, real gratitude, the kind you don't fake, and B repays it immediately, warning Blair about someone way more dangerous than any schoolyard bully. Feige, the corrupt class president, a Viscount's son with actual institutional power behind him. That warning turns out to be exactly right, because right after, Feige, pulling strings through the academy vice principal, has Blair thrown out. Library job, gone. Student housing, gone. Just like that, over nothing but personal spite, our genius protagonist is homeless. Brittany doesn't even hesitate, takes him in, offers up her own spare bedroom, which, for a story that's clearly building a harem around this kid whether he's trying to or not, is a very loaded move dressed up as simple kindness. And that's where this first stretch of the story leaves off. A genius pretending to be a nobody, a professor who just became his roommate, a bully turned into an unlikely ally, and a dangerous noble family circling closer with an agenda nobody's fully explained yet. Not long after the eviction, Brittany drags both her new houseguest and Isabella, because apparently Isabella's basically moved herself in too at this point, to a high society ball at the Howard family mansion. Marble floors, glittering nobles, the whole overdressed circus. And right there in the middle of it hangs a painting. Old, famous, the 7 bridges of the royal capital. A puzzle so legendary the Howard family's entire reputation is built on top of it. For generations, nobody's ever solved it. Nobody's even come close. Feige spots his chance. Drags Blair right up to it in front of the whole crowd, sneering, ready to humiliate the broke ex-noble one more time for good measure. Big mistake. Blair looks at the bridges for a few seconds, doesn't even flinch, then calmly announces the puzzle isn't hard. It's impossible, mathematically completely unsolvable, and he proves it right there, mapping the whole layout into a simple network of points, showing exactly why no path can ever cross every bridge without repeating one. The room goes dead silent. Centuries. Centuries of nobles treating this puzzle like some sacred mystery, and a broke ex-noble kid just tore the whole thing apart with a napkin's worth of math. Viscount Howard, the man who built his entire family's prestige on this exact puzzle staying unsolved, does not take it well. He doesn't yell at Blair. He turns around and slaps his own son across the face in front of everyone for the crime of dragging this humiliation into the spotlight. But Blair isn't done. He walks straight up to the Viscount and asks one more question. A simple one. What's the diagonal length of a square with sides of 1 unit? The Viscount goes pale. Because that question isn't simple at all. It's the doorway into irrational numbers. The kind of math this world's ruling families have apparently been suppressing for generations. Blair name-drops an old Earth legend buried in his memory. A guy from the Pythagorean school who supposedly got killed for revealing exactly this kind of number was real. Different world, suspiciously similar cover-up. Feige, humiliated beyond words now, lunges at Blair in a blind rage. Doesn't get far. A sharp, confident, red-haired third-year steps in and shuts him down cold. First real appearance of Alice, and she does not waste it. Behind closed doors, things get even messier. Viscount Howard's own son, his white-haired heir Abel, confronts him with a gun in hand. Turns out the Viscount didn't just guard the family secret with lies, he killed people over it. Anyone who got close enough to figure out the puzzle was fake got silenced. Abel himself was almost one of them, so Abel takes the family down himself, overthrows his own father right there, on the spot, to save whatever's left of the Howard name. One night, one painting, one math trick, and an entire noble dynasty gets gutted from the inside. Blair wakes up back at Brittany's place the next morning like nothing happened, catches the news that Abel's already shut the whole corrupt mathematical society down, and immediately gets dragged into one of those classic domestic comedy moments with a very dressed-down Brittany that he was absolutely not prepared for first thing in the morning. Then school resumes like the previous night wasn't an actual noble family collapsing in real time. Alice and Isabella start their little war for real now, competing to shove their homemade lunches into his mouth at the exact same moment, because apparently that's a totally normal way to flirt in this world. He just eats both, simultaneously. No complaints. But not everyone in his orbit is fooled by the harmless idiot act anymore. Molly, blue-haired, sharp, working the front desk at the Magic Association library, corners him with an actual dagger to his throat. She recognizes his voice. Knows exactly who he really is under the mask. Chen Luo, the genius. He doesn't even try to deny it, just proves his body's the same one everyone already knows, and lays out the truth, where he's actually from, how he ended up here. Instead of exposing him, she promises to keep the secret, just adds herself to the growing list of people who know more about him than the rest of the school combined. Meanwhile, Feige, humbled all the way down after watching his entire family implode, comes to Blair and actually bows. A real apology, no sarcasm behind it this time. Comes bearing an invitation from Abel himself, an emergency mathematics conference, the whole academic world invited. At the conference, Abel goes public, pulls out his family's actual original diary, and reads the truth out loud in front of everyone. His ancestors lied, for generations, and people died to keep that lie buried. He credits Blair directly as the one who cracked open a whole new mathematical field in the process, irrational numbers, which everyone in the room's been calling the devil's number like it's cursed. Blair doesn't stick around for the applause, slips out before the spotlight gets any bigger than it already is. Doesn't work. The Academy Vice Principal and President Calvin track him down anyway, begging him to help solve the country's sudden crisis now that the devil's number is public knowledge and nobody knows what to do with it. He doesn't hand them the answer on a plate. Tells them straight up, real progress means facing the fear, not getting bailed out. They actually bow to him over it. Back home, Brittany started connecting some very wrong dots, convinced Blair's tangled up in some dramatic love triangle between Isabella and Feige. Meanwhile, Isabella just moves herself into Brittany's house too, fully embedding herself into Blair's daily orbit under the flimsy excuse of studying together. Domestic life gets weirder from there. Blair asks for help building something this world's never seen, a refrigerator, and finds out Brittany's water and wind magic is way stronger than anyone gave her credit for. Then she starts running hand-to-hand combat lessons. Isabella challenges him to a spar, he drops her using an old earth martial art nobody here's ever heard of, and gets knocked clean out by Brittany's overprotective countermove a second later. Wakes up in a position that gets him smacked by an absolutely furious Isabella before he's even fully conscious. Toby, meanwhile, has actually been quietly grinding, manages to replicate Blair's spiritual splitting technique and manifests 2 tiny sparks of his own. Small win, but a real one, from the one guy who's been in his corner since before any of this magic stuff started. Then Alice shows up, kisses him on the cheek in front of the entire class, and the whole room combusts with jealousy on Isabella's behalf. Blair's next move is sneaking into the Magic Association's restricted second floor, the real archives. A purple-haired receptionist blocks him at the door, so he leverages Molly instead, telling her he's cracked a way to improve water magic just to get her to pull strings. It works, but what happens next isn't small. In the testing room, he demonstrates combining fire and water mana directly, something nobody's ever successfully pulled off. And the result is a violent steam explosion that rocks the whole floor. Vice President Elton and a senior mage named Brady scramble the entire staff to try replicating it. Only one person manages it. Molly. Blair walks away with an honorary association membership, and Molly gets bumped straight up in rank because of it. Not a bad trade for one reckless experiment. Later, catching a stumbling Molly on the stairs of that same restricted floor, a jealous rival tries to make a move on him right there in the hallway. He shuts it down hard, threatens to go straight to the president if she doesn't back off. Buried in more restricted texts, he finds something huge, completely draining your spiritual power, all the way to empty, and then letting it recover naturally doesn't just refill the tank, it actually raises the ceiling, permanently. Every natural talent limit this world swears by is apparently just a wall nobody's bothered to push through before. So he starts training like that, hard, deliberately running himself dry, over and over, chasing every extra inch of power he can force out of his own limits. And that's exactly when the story shifts gears completely. Somewhere out past the city, a messenger sprints into Lord Ozdem Clavios's court with an urgent warning. A name that makes seasoned soldiers go quiet. A rogue general, top tier, one of the most dangerous mages alive. Baird has come back. Right on cue, the Academy announces its next big event, a mountain survival exam. Blair gets teamed up with Isabella and Alice, three people who've spent the last several weeks locked in a very complicated dynamic, now stuck together in the wilderness for days. Should be a normal training trip. It is not going to be a normal training trip. Halfway through, the mountain itself splits open. A massive earthquake rips a fissure straight through the ground, and Isabella and Alice go straight down with it, falling 26 feet into a tunnel network that looks like it's been sealed away for centuries. Alice can't breathe. Isabella, without a second of hesitation, performs mouth-to-mouth to save her right there in the dark. Above ground, armored soldiers march toward the mountain to investigate, and walk straight into Baird. He doesn't fight them, he erases them. Alone, in the pouring rain, he wipes out the entire unit in what feels like seconds, leaving nothing behind but a shaking rookie knight named Ethan and his uncle, bleeding out beside him. That's the man who's now standing between our heroes and the surface. Underground, unaware of any of that yet, Isabella and Alice stumble onto something ancient, a massive purple pillar, covered floor to ceiling in inscriptions nobody in this century can read. They're not alone down there either. One of Baird's subordinates finds them first, an ice spear mage who wastes no time going straight for Alice's throat, ready to finish her off without a second thought. That's the exact moment the ground shakes one more time, and Blair drops straight down through the fissure into the middle of it. He doesn't even hesitate. Takes the sword strike meant for Alice straight into his own shoulder, shielding her body with his without a second of doubt. Then he turns, and the ice spear mage who was about to execute her a second ago doesn't get a second chance. A fireball rips out. Chantless, massive, nothing like the polite little exam-sized flame from months ago. It slams into the guy and finishes the job before he can even process what happened. And just to make sure, Blair pulls the oxygen straight out of the air around him, suffocating him into unconsciousness before the flames even settle. No incantation, no hand signs, just pure will and a physics trick nobody down here has ever seen before. Isabella and Alice are still catching their breath when they realize they're not the only surprise visitor in this tunnel. A blade presses against Blair's throat from behind. Ethan, the young knight, creeping up in the chaos, understandably not sure who's friend and who's enemy down here. Blair doesn't panic, doesn't even really try. Twists, locks Ethan's arm before the blade can do anything, and suddenly, it's the terrified rookie knight who's in trouble instead. Once everyone realizes nobody here is the actual threat, Ethan lays out exactly how bad this is. Baird has already activated something ancient, a full underground network, 118 pillars strong, all wired into the one glowing purple monster standing right in front of them. Fully charged, it's not just dangerous, it's a countdown. 1 hour, and Yabo City stops existing. There's a way to stop it, though. Ethan's carrying a seal stone, something built specifically to shut the master pillar down, but he can't do it alone. And here's the moment that tells you exactly what kind of story this is. Blair agrees to help, sure, but the thing that actually seals the deal for him is hearing there's a 100 million gold coin bounty on Baird's head. Genius mathematician, world-saving hero, and still very much motivated by a payday. Isabella and Alice sign on too, and the four of them push deeper into the ruins together. They find a hidden passage into the main chamber. Ethan steps up to read the activation plaque, trying to figure out how to disable the thing safely, and the second he touches it, a fireball trap detonates right in his face, knocking him out cold before he can finish, which is exactly when Baird and his forces show up. Isabella and Alice go on the attack immediately, throwing everything they've got at him. Doesn't matter. Baird just shrugs it off. Doesn't dodge, doesn't block, just lets pure spiritual pressure roll off him and completely nullifies their magic before it even lands. This is what a top-tier mage actually looks like, and it's terrifying. Blair steps up next, unloading a full volley of Chantless fireballs. And unlike the girl's attacks, these actually connect, actually hit him. First real crack in Baird's armor of the fight. So Blair pushes further, combines fire and water together, the same trick that shattered windows and blew up a testing chamber back at the association. Massive explosion. Baird walks out of it without a scratch, then closes the distance in a heartbeat, breaks straight through Blair's guard with brutal hand-to-hand technique, and knocks him out cold before he can even react. This is the fight our genius protagonist is actually losing. First real wall he's hit since this whole story started. Ethan wakes back up, groggy, bleeding, and somehow still moving, grabs the seal stone and does the one thing he came down here to do. Hurls it directly into the master pillar. It's working. It's actually working. Except one of Baird's men, a soldier named Oslo, sees it happening and throws a metal spear straight at Ethan to stop him before the seal can finish. Ethan sees it coming, has time to dodge. He doesn't. He plants his feet, takes the spear straight through the chest, and lets his body do what his hands already started. Because moving even an inch might mean the seal fails and the whole city dies instead of him. The rookie knight everyone treated like the weak link of the group ends up being the one who saves it. The device goes dark. The countdown stops. Even Baird, the man who just single-handedly wiped out an army and knocked out a genius mathematician without breaking a sweat, stops and actually acknowledges what just happened. A moment of real, quiet respect for a kid who just sacrificed everything to stop him. It doesn't last. Baird's remaining crew, desperate, drops to their knees and begs for one more shot, one more plan, and what they do next is horrifying. A forbidden sacrifice ritual, permanently stripping the magic out of their own remaining knights just to force the barrier back online. Ethan's death didn't stop this, it just delayed it. While the pillar recharges, Baird does something even crueler than the ritual itself. He casts a memory spell on the entire group, forcing Blair, Isabella, and Alice to live through his own past like it's happening to them directly. They see it all. His squad, holding a defensive line for 10 straight days without the reinforcements they were promised. Branded traitors anyway by the people who abandoned them. His wife and his son, executed by the very kingdom he bled for. Crowds jeering while it happened. It's not an excuse for what he's doing now, but it's very clear, watching it, exactly why he's doing it. The pillar hits full charge. Baird steps forward, ready to shove his hand straight into the core and finish what he started. And that's when Blair moves. Turns out Ethan slipped him a small guard knife earlier, right before all this went sideways. Quietly, without anyone noticing. Blair's had it hidden this whole time, waiting. He cuts through his ropes in a heartbeat and comes out swinging, landing a punch that outright shatters Baird's jaw before the man even sees it coming. Baird answers with a wall of fireballs. Blair throws up a barrier and does the same trick that's carried him through half this fight. Rips every last bit of oxygen out of the air inside it. The flames just die. Nothing left for them to burn. He closes the gap again, hits Baird a second time. Baird's not done though. Pulls a hidden blade straight out of his own staff, slashes clean across Blair's already wounded arm, and stomps it down hard enough to make sure it's out of the fight. That's when Isabella and Alice step back in, throwing a distraction spell just big enough to buy Blair the half second he needs. He uses it. Targets the air directly around Baird this time, strips it bare of oxygen at close range, and doesn't stop until the man who single-handedly slaughtered an entire army finally drops. Unconscious. No final spell, no last stand. Just silence where he used to be standing. The pillar goes dark for good this time. Except the whole ruin's rigged to self-destruct now that its core is dead, and the ceiling starts coming down around them. Blair grabs both girls, throws one last look back at where Ethan's body is still lying, and starts running. A rockfall seals the only way out. No panic, though, not from him. He pulls oxygen straight out of the air one more time, but this time he's not smothering a flame. He's building pressure, turning empty space into a shockwave strong enough to blow the rubble apart, while Isabella and Alice throw up a shield to keep them all from getting shredded by the debris. They break through right as the sun's coming up. Fresh air, daylight, and Blair finally goes down. Blood loss catching up all at once now that the adrenaline's gone. Brittany finds them from the air, flying straight in to pull them out before anything else can go wrong. He wakes up in a hospital bed surrounded by all three of them, and Lord Osdom Clavios himself shows up not long after, the actual ruler of the city, bowing to a broke ex-noble student for saving both his daughter and everyone else living under his protection. Recovery doesn't last long before the story throws him right back into high society. A formal Clavios family dinner, full manners, full pressure, and somewhere in the middle of it, Blair drifts off into a full daydream about marrying Isabella and eventually running the entire city himself. Isabella catches him staring off into space, yanks his ear for looking dirty, and it spirals into one of those ridiculous conversations about naming hypothetical future kids that neither of them will admit they're actually enjoying. The piece doesn't hold. Abel Howard, the same guy who just took down his own corrupt father a few chapters back, shows up with a warning. The Queen's own younger brother, Finance Minister Walter, is working with corrupt capital auditors to slap a fraudulent tax charge on Lord Osdom. Not because he actually did anything wrong, because stripping the city of its autonomy is worth more to them than the truth. Sure enough, right in the middle of that same family dinner, Walter and a tax collector burst in to launch the audit right then and there. Isabella, who was just teasing Blair about kids 5 minutes ago, completely breaks down and throws herself into his arms, terrified of what happens to her father next. Blair steps outside, corners President Calvin and another association official named Brad, and drops the bomb he's been sitting on this entire story. He's Chen Luo, the legendary math god half this kingdom's been whispering about. The reaction is instant and completely unhinged. Both men are so starstruck, they immediately offer to just assassinate Walter's entire family to make the problem disappear, like that's a totally normal solution. Blair shuts that down fast, tells them to handle it the clean way instead. So they do. Calvin and Brad lean on their considerable influence and go straight after the tax collector, a man named Caesar, who folds almost instantly under the pressure. Suddenly discovers hard proof that it's actually Walter who's been embezzling, and the guards drag the screaming minister out of the mansion in front of everyone who came to watch him ruin someone else's night. Isabella, overwhelmed with relief, kisses Blair right on the cheek in front of her whole family, then immediately trips over a rolling gold coin and crashes straight into him. He catches her, but not cleanly enough, and accidentally rips her chest shawl off in front of both her parents. Pure mortification. A fireball erupts out of pure embarrassment. Later, her mother Anna quietly puts something together that Isabella never actually said out loud. She's been delaying her own university applications for an entire year, on purpose, just to stay close to Blair. That night, Isabella climbs straight through his bedroom window to grill him about whatever he talked to her father about earlier. He answers her question with a joke about her chest size instead, which goes about as well as you'd expect. She stomps his face and bolts back out the window, completely unaware her own father was standing right outside listening to the entire exchange. Not long after, Vice President Colino formally presents Blair and Brittany with the Edwin Award, the same one they got nominated for after Ralph's Riddle blew up internationally. Officially recognized now for founding an entire new field, topology. Domestic life keeps rolling right alongside the accolades. Blair whips up a spicy breakfast. Isabella stubbornly chugs Brittany's ice-cold enchanted water against every warning given to her, and predictably ends up doubled over in pain for it. Blair nurses her back with black tea, and somewhere in the middle of that she quietly decides she wants to specialize in fire magic, specifically so she can actually protect him for once instead of the other way around. Alice picks this exact moment to announce she's ranked up to initiate-level mage, and rather than keep anything subtle, she confesses her feelings for Blair directly to Isabella's face. That ignites, no pun intended, a full-blown rivalry that isn't cooling down anytime soon. Isabella eventually corners him and forces the question everyone's been dancing around. Pick one. Her or Alice. He tries to negotiate for both, or gold coins as an alternative. When that predictably fails, he picks Isabella, but only after pointing out Alice has the better figure, which earns him a slap hard enough to make the decision feel a lot less romantic than intended. Toby, still grinding away in the background, begs to learn whatever technique took down Baird. Blair, unwilling to actually explain real oxygen chemistry to a medieval fantasy world, just makes something up on the spot, calls it the oxygen absorption law, and Toby, completely sincere, vows to master it with everything he's got. Then the academy gates get sealed shut without explanation, So Blair slips back into his Chenluo disguise and heads to the association to check on Molly, who informs him his combination magic patent has already started printing money. 800 gold coins and climbing. He leaves it sitting in her vault for later. That night he has an absolutely ridiculous nightmare about drowning in a mountain of freezing gold coins, wakes up screaming, and finds Isabella standing right over his half-naked body, staring. Broke and apparently allergic to learning from his mistakes, Blair tries gambling his way to more cash next, posting an insanely complex problem based on the butterfly theorem with a small entry fee, banking on the prize pool ballooning before he swoops in to solve it himself and pocket the winnings. Brittany walks by, solves it in minutes, wins her own 10 gold coins right out from under him. Undeterred, he goes even bigger, dumps his entire 50 gold coin savings into an even nastier problem involving imaginary number lines. 3 days later, the pot's grown to 200 coins, and Abel Howard's already solved it overnight, wiping him out completely. Desperate, he tries borrowing 20 coins from Alice, who immediately assumes it's a confession of love, and storms off furious the moment she realizes it's just a loan request. Right when things are looking bleak on the financial front, President Calvin shows up begging for help with something much bigger than pocket change. A delegation of arrogant scholars from the rival kingdom of Gia has arrived, systematically solving every math problem Lonan's academics can throw at them, humiliating the entire kingdom in the process. There's a 5,000 gold coin bounty attached to fixing this. That's all the motivation Blair needs. He digs into old Earth history and pulls out 3 genuinely impossible problems, the kind mathematicians spent literal centuries failing to crack back home. Trisecting an angle, squaring a circle, doubling a cube, all using nothing but a straight edge and compass. The Gia scholars, led by a guy named Tannen, absolutely lose it. Weeks stretch into months as they refuse to leave without an answer that doesn't exist. One of them has a full mental breakdown right there in the hall and has to be physically carried out. Blair, apparently enjoying himself now, tosses in one more for good measure. Zeno's paradox. The old thought experiment about Achilles never quite catching a tortoise. It's not even that hard by Earth standards, but it completely demolishes the space-time assumptions this world's math is built on, and the Gia delegation finally packs up and retreats home in total academic defeat. Calvin delivers 3 massive chests of gold, 7,000 coins total, straight to his door. When people ask how he actually solved any of it, Blair keeps his mouth shut. Dropping real quantum-level physics on a medieval world sounds like a fantastic way to break civilization, and he's not interested in finding out for sure. With actual money in hand for once, he takes Brittany and Isabella on a proper shopping spree, then sits down and writes out an entire foundational math textbook from scratch, geometry, straight out of Euclid's playbook, mostly to lock in royalties for the rest of his life. He delivers the manuscript personally, under the Chenluo name, and announces it's officially his last major contribution to mathematics. From here on, he's going all in on magic. Kalino, completely overwhelmed, drops to his knees and calls him a saint on the spot. And far away, in the royal palace, something the queen's people have been using to quietly track this mysterious genius suddenly can't handle whatever power is radiating off him anymore. It just explodes. The queen doesn't panic, doesn't even look surprised. She just smiles and gives the order to bring this young scholar in front of her throne, in person, no more watching from a distance. Picture it. Rows of wooden desks, robes instead of uniforms, chalk dust hanging in the air. Brittany's mid-lecture, sharp voice cutting through a half-asleep room when she spots a kid slumped over his desk, completely out. That kid is Blair, except the mind waking up behind those eyes right now belongs to someone else entirely. He surfaces groggy, disoriented, the way you'd feel snapping awake from the deepest sleep of your life. Except this isn't sleep. This is a full transplant. Wrong hands. Wrong voice in his own head when he tries to think. Wrong everything. And before he can even get his bearings, Brittany's already calling him out. Wants him at the board. Wants the answer to a summation problem. Add every number from 1 to 100. Right now, in front of everyone, as punishment for dozing off. The class is already snickering before he's even out of his seat. Because they all know exactly who Blair is, the kid who can't cast a fireball, the kid whose family name means nothing anymore, the punchline that's been walking these halls for years. He walks up, doesn't sweat it, doesn't even really think about it. The answer's just there, The way breathing is just there. He writes down the total in about 4 seconds flat and hands the chalk back like he just answered, "What's your name?" Brittany stares at the board, then at him, then back at the board, like maybe the numbers are going to rearrange themselves into a mistake if she looks hard enough. They don't. That's the moment. Right there. Everyone in that room thinks they just watched a fluke. What they actually watched was a world-class mathematician doing party trick math in a body that isn't his, in a school that has absolutely no idea what just sat down in the back row. Let's also slow down on the fireball exam, because that scene deserves the full weight. Word's already spread by exam day that Blair solved Brittany's pairing problem in a minute flat. Doesn't matter. Magic and math are two completely different reputations in this world, and everybody's still expecting the same old joke when his name gets called for the practical. The instructor running the test actually tries to spare him. Quietly moves to skip his name on the list, hoping to save the kid one more public embarrassment. Kind gesture, doesn't survive contact with the bully in the front row, who loudly demands Blair go up anyway. Wants the show, wants the laugh, wants to watch the useless kid strike out one more time in front of everybody. So Blair steps up to the mark. No chant, no hand signs. Every other student who's gone before him has muttered incantations, traced symbols in the air, done the whole ritual dance this world calls spellcasting. He just stares at the target and wills it. The fireball that erupts isn't the size of a candle flame. It's not even the size of the polite little test fires the top students in class have been throwing all morning. It's a wall of heat that swallows the target whole and keeps going, turning stone and wood into smoking rubble in under 2 seconds. Nobody claps, nobody laughs. The room just goes completely silent, the kind of silence that's louder than screaming, while everyone tries to process that the school punchline just outclassed every single person who mocked him. That's the beat this story keeps hitting, over and over in different flavors. Underestimate him, watch him detonate the expectation, repeat. Now let's really dig into the oxygen breakthrough, because that scene got compressed way too fast the first time through. After sneaking out past curfew and getting through registration at the association, after the explosion that forced Andrew and the old mage into that emergency barrier, Blair spends real time buried in restricted texts most students never even get clearance to touch. And what he reads bothers him. This whole world's magic system is built around 4 elements, like that's the ceiling of what's possible. Fire, water, wind, earth. Full stop. Like nobody here has ever cracked open a chemistry book, because nobody here has one to crack open. He knows better. Air isn't one thing, it's a mixture, and buried inside that mixture is a gas that, if you isolate it, concentrate it, and introduce it to fire, does things this world's mages have genuinely never seen. So he starts small, isolates a pocket of pure oxygen in his palm, the way you'd hold water in cupped hands. Feels wrong under his fingers, almost too thin, nothing like the thick, textured mana this world's elements usually feel like. Then he adds fire. The reaction isn't gradual. It's instant, a violent flare that turns from orange to nearly white in under a second. And the pressure wave that rolls off it doesn't just knock him back a step, it blows out windows, not metaphorically. Actual glass, actual shattering, up and down the street, including, and this is the part that's going to bite him later, every window in Brittany's own house. He stands there in the aftermath, ears ringing, absolutely delighted with himself, while half the neighborhood starts yelling out their broken windows into the night. This is a kid who just accidentally invented a weapon nobody on this planet has a name for, and his first reaction is pure scientific excitement. That gap between how dangerous what he's doing actually is, and how casually he treats it, is going to become a running theme. Let's go back and really sit inside the association testing chamber too, because Molly's promotion moment deserves more room to breathe. Getting onto the restricted second floor takes some maneuvering. The purple-haired receptionist isn't budging for a masked stranger no matter how politely he asks. So Blair pivots and tells Molly he's found a way to improve water magic. That's enough to get her pulling strings on his behalf. In the actual testing room, with a small audience of association staff watching, he doesn't just demonstrate fire and water separately, he layers them together, feeds a controlled stream of water magic directly into a compressed fire casting, the exact combination this world's mages have always been taught is impossible because the elements are supposed to cancel each other out. Instead of canceling out, they compound. The water flashes instantly to superheated steam, and the pressure spike that follows rattles the entire chamber hard enough that dust rains down from the ceiling beams. Vice President Elton doesn't waste a second. Pulls in Brady and every senior staff member he can grab, determined to figure out if this was a fluke or something replicable. One after another, seasoned mages try to reproduce what Blair just did. One after another, they fail. The combination just doesn't want to hold for anyone else. Except Molly. She steps up, nervous, clearly not expecting to be the one who cracks it, and somehow, on her attempt, the steam reaction holds together clean, controlled, exactly the way Blair's did. The room goes quiet in a completely different way than usual. Not mockery quiet, genuinely stunned quiet. That's how a library receptionist walks out of that chamber with a promotion, and how Blair walks out with an honorary association membership that's going to matter a lot more later than it seems right now. Let's also go back and stretch out the underground fight with Baird properly, because that whole sequence deserves the cinematic treatment. By the time Blair drops through that fissure, Isabella and Alice have already been trapped underground for hours, already survived one near-death moment when Alice stopped breathing and Isabella brought her back with nothing but sheer panic and mouth-to-mouth. They're rattled, exhausted, and staring down an ice spear mage who's got Alice by the throat with zero intention of letting her go. Blair doesn't announce himself, doesn't call out a warning, he just falls out of the dark, takes the strike meant for Alice's skull across his own shoulder instead, and answers with a fireball that doesn't just hit, it detonates, throwing the attacker back into the tunnel wall hard enough to crack stone. Then, almost as an afterthought, he strips the oxygen out of the space around the guy's face, and watches him go from unconscious adjacent to fully unconscious in about 3 seconds. Isabella and Alice barely have time to process any of that before a blade suddenly pressed to Blair's own throat from behind. Ethan, understandably jumpy after watching half his unit get slaughtered above ground by the very general whose people are currently crawling through this tunnel. Blair reads the angle of the knife, the weight behind Ethan's grip, and disarms him almost lazily, twists the arm, takes the blade, and has the terrified rookie knight pinned before Ethan even finishes his sentence explaining why he attacked in the first place. Once everyone agrees nobody in this tunnel is actually the enemy, Ethan lays out the real horror. 118 pillars, all feeding a master node that's already spinning up, and less than an hour before Yabo City stops being a city. The bounty conversation happens fast, almost comically fast given the stakes. Someone mentions Baird's got 100 million gold coin price on his head, and Blair's in before the sentence even finishes. Genuine hero instincts, sure, but it's the gold that closes the deal, and everyone in the tunnel kind of silently agrees not to examine that too closely. They push into the main chamber together. Ethan steps up to the activation plaque first, careful, reading the old script line by line, and the booby trap catches him mid-sentence. Fire erupts out of the stonework itself, and he's on the ground before anyone can pull him back. That's exactly when Baird arrives, and the mood in that chamber changes completely. Isabella goes first, throwing everything she's got, full offensive spells, no holding back. Alice follows right behind her, and Baird doesn't even bother dodging, just lets the attacks hit a wall of pure spiritual pressure that dissolves them before they connect, like swatting away gnats. It's the first time either of the girls has faced someone genuinely out of their weight class, and it shows on both their faces. Blair steps in next, volley after volley of Chantless fireballs, faster than anything he's thrown before, and unlike the girls' spells, these actually land, actually mark him. First real dent in Baird's composure since he walked into the room. So Blair escalates, layers water into the mix, recreates the same steam explosion combo that rattled the association testing chamber, except at full lethal intensity this time. Baird walks out of the blast radius like it was a light drizzle. Closes the gap in a single stride, breaks Blair's guard with a strike that looks almost casual, and puts him down cold before he can even reset his footing. That's the low point. The genius who's been steamrolling every challenge for months just got dropped in under a minute by a man who hasn't even drawn his weapon yet. Ethan wakes up through sheer stubbornness, grabs the seal stone with hands that are visibly shaking, and throws it dead center into the master pillar. For 1 second, it looks like it's actually going to work clean. Then Oslo sees it, winds up, throws a spear with enough force to end this before the seal finishes settling. Ethan has time to move. He doesn't. Feet planted, eyes open, he takes it straight through the chest, rather than risk even the smallest flinch undoing what he just threw. The rookie knight nobody ever thought would matter becomes the exact reason Yabo City is still standing 5 minutes later. The device goes dark. Even Baird, mid-massacre, mid-conquest, a man who just erased an entire army in the rain without blinking, stops and looks at what just happened with something that isn't quite respect, but isn't far off either. It's a short pause. His crew doesn't share the sentiment. They drop to their knees and beg for a workaround, and what they land on is monstrous, a forbidden ritual that permanently rips the magic out of their own surviving knights, just to shove the barrier back online. While that ritual grinds forward, Baird does something almost worse than the violence itself. He casts a shared memory spell over the whole group, and suddenly Blair, Isabella, and Alice aren't just watching his backstory, they're living inside it. 10 days holding a line with no reinforcements. The word traitor stamped on men who bled for a kingdom that abandoned them. A public execution, his wife, his son, a crowd that cheered. It doesn't excuse the ritual happening 10 feet away, but it recontextualizes the man doing it, and that's exactly the point. The pillar hits full charge. Baird steps forward to finish it personally. And that's when the knife Ethan slipped him earlier, quietly, before any of this went sideways, without a word to anyone, finally gets used. Blair cuts free, closes the distance, and lands a punch that outright shatters Baird's jaw before the man even registers he's loose. Baird answers with fire, a full wall of it. Blair throws up a barrier and strips the air inside clean, and the flames just die where they stand, starved of anything to burn. He closes again, hits him again. Baird pulls a blade hidden inside his own staff, and opens up a fresh wound across Blair's already injured arm, then pins it under his boot to make sure it's finished for the fight. Isabella and Alice throw one last combined distraction, just enough of a window for Blair to strip the oxygen out of the air directly around Baird's face. No barrier, no buildup, just a hard localized vacuum, and hold it there until the man who leveled an entire army finally drops. Silence. The pillar goes dark for good, and then the ceiling starts coming down as the whole ruin triggers its own collapse. Blair grabs both girls, throws one last look toward where Ethan's body is still lying, and runs. A rockfall seals the exit ahead of them, and he answers it the same way he's answered everything else down here. Strips a pocket of air bare and turns the emptiness into a shockwave, blasting the rubble apart while Isabella and Alice throw up a shield to keep the debris off all three of them. They break the surface right as the sun's coming up, and that's exactly when the adrenaline runs out and Blair goes down from blood loss, with Brittany arriving by flight magic just in time to pull all three of them out. Now let's slow down the aftermath scenes too, because there's a lot of good character texture in there that got rushed. Waking up in a hospital bed surrounded by Isabella, Alice, and Brittany all at once is its own kind of chaos. 3 very different women, 3 very different ways of showing worry, all colliding in one small room. Lord Osdom shows up not long after, and the sight of the actual ruler of the city bowing to a bandaged teenager says everything about how much weight that rescue actually carried. The family dinner that follows is where the story leans hardest into its comedic register. Formal table, formal manners, Blair drifting off mid-conversation into a full fantasy about eventually marrying into the family and running the city. Completely checked out, completely obvious about it, until Isabella catches him staring at nothing and yanks his ear hard enough to snap him back to reality. What follows is a genuinely ridiculous back and forth about baby names for kids that don't exist yet, both of them fully committed to the bit while very clearly not joking at all underneath it. Then Walter crashes the party, and the tone flips instantly from lighthearted teasing to real fear. Isabella's whole demeanor changes the second she realizes her father's actual freedom is on the line, and the girl who spent the last scene arguing about hypothetical baby names is suddenly sobbing into Blair's chest instead. Blair's response is the coldest, most calculated thing he's done all story. Steps outside, drops his real identity on Calvin and Brad like it's nothing, and watches 2 grown men nearly fall over themselves offering to solve the problem with outright murder. He shuts that down flat, redirects them toward pressure instead of blood, and watches the whole crisis dissolve within the hour, because apparently being a world-famous math genius comes with that kind of institutional leverage attached. Isabella's gratitude kiss, immediately undercut by her tripping over a gold coin and Blair accidentally tearing her shawl off in front of both her parents, is peak Manhwa whiplash. Devastating political victory 1 minute, mortifying slapstick the next, and the story never lets either mood sit too long before flipping it. Her mother quietly clocking that Isabella delayed her own university plans an entire year just to stay near him is a small, easy-to-miss beat, but it's doing a lot of work. It's the story quietly confirming this isn't just teasing on her end anymore. And that late-night window scene, her climbing in to interrogate him deflecting with a joke about her chest, her stomping his face and fleeing without either of them realizing her father was standing right outside the whole time, is exactly the kind of comedic beat this story keeps returning to right after something genuinely heavy. Never lets the tension sit too long before yanking it back into farce. The Edwin Award ceremony that follows almost feels like a breather after everything. Official recognition, a whole new field of math credited to his name, and yet within a day he's right back to domestic chaos, nursing Isabella through a stomachache after she stubbornly ignores every warning about Brittany's enchanted ice water. That's the moment she quietly decides to specialize in fire magic, not for glory, not for rank, specifically so she can be the one protecting him for once, instead of always being the one who needs saving. Small decision, but it's a real character turn buried inside a comedy beat. Alice's confession right in front of Isabella lights the rivalry all the way up. And the pick-one showdown that follows, Blair trying to negotiate for both of them, or gold coins as a consolation prize, before finally choosing Isabella while praising Alice's figure in the same breath, is peak self-sabotage, and the slap that follows is completely earned. Toby's arc in all this stays small but sincere. He's not chasing power for glory either. He just wants to keep pace with the one friend who never treated him differently. And the fake oxygen absorption law Blair hands him becomes this quiet, funny reminder that even Blair's inner circle doesn't get the full truth of what he actually is. And the money arc, the failed gambling schemes, losing to Brittany by accident and to Abel by overnight ambush, getting rejected trying to borrow gold from Alice, works because it's the one place in the story where being a genius doesn't automatically win. He can outmath a rival kingdom's entire scholarly delegation, but he cannot out-hustle his own professor on a lazy afternoon walk past a chalkboard, which makes the Gia Scholar collapse hit even harder by contrast. This is a kid who just got outsmarted by his own landlord over 10 gold coins, turning around days later and mentally dismantling an entire foreign academic institution, using problems humanity spent literal centuries failing to crack. Tannen's team doesn't just lose. They come apart, one member dragged out mid-breakdown, the rest packing up and fleeing before Zeno's paradox can finish what the geometry problems started. Calvin's response, 3 chests, 7,000 gold coins, delivered personally, finally solves the money problem that's been quietly running underneath this entire story since the eviction. And Blair's choice not to explain any of the actual math behind it, recognizing that real advanced physics dropped onto a world this early would do more damage than good, is the first real sign that this version of Chen Luo has learned something about restraint. Writing an entire foundational geometry textbook under his real name, then immediately announcing he's stepping back from math for good, closes out this arc with him fully leaning into magic instead, right before the Queen's own spy orb shatters from the sheer pressure of his power, and she decides, smiling on her throne, that watching from a distance isn't going to cut it anymore. That's the full picture, filled back in. Everything that carried this story from a sleeping kid getting mocked in a classroom, all the way to a queen personally demanding an audience with him.